Welcome to Zcast, everybody. I'm ZS Caraval from ZK Research, and I'm here for another episode, another one of my thought leadership series. Look who's joining me today, Bob Laliberte. Bob, like I always like to say, you're the second best network analyst out there.
That's quite an introduction, ZS. Thank you.
Yeah, and before we get started, though, I want to thank eWeek, my media partner, as always. Every Zcast is done in conjunction with the eWeek eSpeaks program. Bob, I'm having you on today because you are one of the best network analysts that I know, and we had a lot of network news come out in the past few weeks, right? First of all, it's earnings season, and I think one of the things that we're seeing is that network modernization is now a top priority for companies. I think we went through this period of time where, through the pandemic, people weren't going back to the office, and so why upgrade your network? But now, when you look at all the numbers, and I'm sure you're seeing this in your customer base as well, network modernization's a must now.
Yeah, absolutely, ZS. I mean, it's a combination of factors, right? You've got a highly distributed environment where your applications are being distributed across your private data centers, multiple public clouds, and your edge locations, and all your workers, knowledge workers at least, are distributed and working from home or working remote. So suddenly the network's becoming a lot more important to ensure that connectivity and to make sure organizations have visibility into it. And for those who are returning to the office, that hybrid work, it's creating a whole new paradigm for what that campus environment should look like and causing a lot of changes. So I think it's really a host of all these things that are a rising tide that's floating up all of these network companies, and they're all enjoying a lot more success this year.
Yeah, and it's good to see. Certainly, since we're in the network industry, it keeps us busy. And actually, you brought up the distributed nature of work. I think the first vendor I want to talk about is Extreme Networks, and I think one of the interesting aspects of network modernization is, for the first time, ever, we're seeing a pretty rapid adoption of cloud management tools. I think this is an area that IT has been hesitant to get into. I think because IT now has to work remotely, right? You almost have to cloud manage this stuff. And I know Extreme saw 71% growth in their SaaS product and in Cloud IQ. I think you had some other thoughts you wanted to talk about them specifically.
Yeah, no, I think it's been a great transition for these organizations to shift to the cloud. And in our research, we absolutely see that the top goal for organizations trying to streamline their network management is to move to the cloud. And I think the other compelling piece, and we'll be talking about this more as we go through with other vendors, is that once you shift that paradigm and you've got the management in the cloud, it opens up the doors to leveraging a lot more of the AI ML technologies. So you can drive a lot more intelligence. You can gather that information up. So I think it's really driving, it's certainly streamlining access to it, but it's also doing, it's taking away a lot of those typical lifecycle management things that you would have to deal with if it was still on premises. So really enabling organizations to take advantage of cloud native technologies when they're building out this management software. And again, leverage all that data that's being collected to be able to drive those algorithms and drive lots of automation, orchestration, self-healing, self-optimizing capabilities.
Yeah, it would be hard to see how you can do that AI without leveraging the cloud. Some of the interesting aspects of, I think, the Extremes last quarter, they announced NASCAR as an official partner, that now they joins Major League Baseball and the NFL as official sponsor, official sports sponsorships. I think what that signals to me is how good Extreme is in those really tough environments. I've talked to a lot of conference centers that use Extreme as well. In fact, I was just over in Dubai at GITEX. The Dubai Convention Center is all Extreme Wi-Fi as well. And that's, these are very demanding environments. And I think that speaks to a testament that they do big, tough deployments better than anybody.
Yeah, and they've been focused at it for a long time. I think in addition to NASCAR, they re-upped the NFL, not only for Wi-Fi, but for analytics through 2024. So yeah, like you said, it's just a good validation of the work that they're doing there and the fact that their technology is able to cover those really difficult spaces. And as a matter of fact, I think they also rolled out one of their first 6E deployments as well.
Yeah, 6E is pretty interesting. And for those not familiar with 6E, it's the 6 gigahertz version of Wi-Fi 6, and obviously your Traditional 6 with that works on 5 and 2.4 will work as well. But what do you see as the outlook for 6 versus 6E?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think certainly if you're at a point and you're at a juncture where you're going to be deploying technology and you held off last year, so you maybe slowed your 6 deployment, there's kind of this thought of, for investment protection, why wouldn't you deploy that 6E technology? I mean, being able to take advantage of all that freely opened up spectrum, which is really nice and clean right now. There's not a lot of devices playing for it or vying in it. I think it presents a lot of opportunities for organizations to innovate while enabling some of the other technologies, maybe just the guest Wi-Fi and things like that to stay on the old spectrum and leverage the new spectrum to innovate. And there's plenty of it there for everyone. So,
yeah. And finishing up on Extreme, I'll just make a note that they closed Ipanema, which actually jumps them into the SD-WAN space. This is something I know you and I have talked about in the past. It's been a big hole in their portfolio. They've been a good campus company. But now I think every vendor is trying to provide the end-to-end. So it's hard to go to market without the WAN side.
Correct. Absolutely.
Yeah. Also, last week we had Juniper had an industry analyst event, and they announced something called Support Insights, which creates like a Mist-like experience across all the Juniper products. What were your thoughts on what Support Insights is and what it can do for their customers?
Yeah, I thought that was a great step. I mean, everyone's trying to drive some level of operational efficiency, and some of the more difficult things are, I just don't know what I have. So being able to have a single consolidated place where all of my devices are talking and they're connecting to, they're providing information about what level of software they're on, et cetera, those types of things. So for patch management, lifecycle management, even fault, things like that. I think it's a great opportunity for organizations to drive operational efficiency and certainly a lot of those day 2 operations.
Yeah, it's the first, because I know they've had Mist for a while, and Mist is interesting because it's you can think of it as read-write, right, where it can actually identify things and then fix them, where Support Insights is more read-only, where it's meant to inform, but it does work across every Junos product, right, ACX, EX, PTX, MX, QFX, and SRX. And so I know one of the questions that I thought was good that you asked on the call is what they do with this now and how they marry it with some of the other cool technologies they bought, like 128T and Apstra and things like that.
Yeah, and I think it was interesting. I think what they said is, I think it's a great initial start of them collecting all this data and rolling it up. And what I believe they were talking about is that they would enable you when you were having problems that you could probably contextually launch from there into the individual domains that you were working at. So whether it be Apstra for the data center, whether it would be the Mist environment for the wired, wireless, and WAN. So it's a great first step of consolidating all of their platforms into a single place to provide information to organizations and then let them quickly access those domain-specific tools that they have as well.
Yeah, and they followed up in our little event as well. They announced some 6E access points. I think that's something you'll see be consistent. And then also something called IoT Assurance. And I like that one because I do think the safe workplace is going to be powered by IoT devices. I'm talking to companies now that are putting in temperature scanners and health checkers, and even one company that's using cleaning robots to go around and sanitize things overnight. And so these are all IoT devices, and we've been talking about IT/OT integration for a long time, but I think it's here. So what did you think of IoT Assurance?
Yeah, I thought that was great. And I think another piece of that was so that they're able to onboard those IoT devices that lean more heavily to OT and then aren't instantly recognizable as IT devices. So it was a good time saving. Like I said, the recognition that more of these OT devices will be connected through the wireless, and especially the 6E, right? There's some advantages there with 6E about battery life and things like that, being able to shut down and check in and so forth. So I think it's a smart move on their part. And like you said, especially as we return to work, there's going to be a lot more devices there for sensing security, sensing proximity, et cetera, things of that nature that are going to need to be accounted for.
Yeah. Certainly I would agree with you too, that those OT devices are now becoming the purview of IT, whether the IT people like it or not. So if you're watching this and you're working in network operations and you don't think IoT is part of your job, just wait a bit, because it will become that. Third vendor I want to talk about here is Arista. And what can we say about Arista? This is a company I'll admit, a couple of years ago, I was kind of skeptical as whether Arista could keep the growth going. I looked at them as a data center specialist, and they do data center and hyperscale better than anybody. But I questioned whether they could take that high-end expertise and bring it down to enterprise. But they have. I mean, their growth has been phenomenal, and they've leveraged, frankly, some technologies. Like, I didn't think the Mojo technology was that great when they bought it, but they've put a lot of work into that and made it better. And, this is a company that's on a roll right now, aren't they?
Yeah, they certainly are. Their growth continues, like you said, pretty much unabated. They've made some nice moves into what they call, I think, the cognitive campus now. So they're taking that technology at the high end and bringing it down for the campus environment. So making a lot of good moves. They're another one with the consistent operating system. They've got the cloud-based management. So they've got a lot of things that they've set up for themselves to drive those operational efficiencies for their customers. And obviously, like I said, they're really well known for their performance.
And they just announced something called Network Data Lake, or NetDL in Arista speak, that follows up. And so if you've been following Arista, they had something called NetDB, which was their network database, which aggregated all the information from their operating system and gave you a single database with which to work with. And you mentioned, their AI capabilities in cloud vision. What NetDL is you take the NetDB info and you add a bunch of third-party data, like Fortinet, Palo Alto data like that. And so this in theory would make AI smarter, wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not only AI, but I think it's also, we're seeing a lot around observability. And so how do you create for them, pulling this together creates that single source of truth from all the network devices, and now enables you to pull in from other third parties for context, right? Awareness, other types of areas. So I think that's something that will be really important moving forward, to have access to this type, whether it's being used for developing AI or whether it's going to be used to help out with observability solutions as well.
Yeah, that's an important piece of it. We talk a lot about full stack observability, but how many companies really can see the whole stack? They might be able to see their full stack, but of course, the application stack is much broader than that. So, good for Arista for that. The other thing that Arista announced recently was their new Trident 4 and Tomahawk 4 products. So the Trident 4 is the enterprise class products. The Tomahawk 4 are the hyperscale products. These are both 400 gig capable product. I think you're talking like 25 terabit capacity in a single switch. I remember when the first terabyte switch came out, I'm like, terabyte switching, that's crazy. And one of the things that I've always liked about Arista is they have taken the concept of bright box, right? Which, because they're Broadcom or Barefoot or whoever running on merchant silicon, but they've taken that concept and perfected it. And I think one of the ways they demonstrate that is their OS. Even though they have a single OS, they can still run on all the different types of silicon. So they're typically first to market with, they were first to market with Tomahawk 3 and Trident 3. They're first to market with Tomahawk 4 and Trident 4. And this is really a testament to Arista and the way they build their products, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, it's, if you think about them, like you said, originally when you started this, you were talking about, hey, they're really known for the data center. They're always on the cutting edge. And it's interesting, even though they're releasing and they've got this capabilities for 400 gig, when you talk to them, they're already on to 800, right?
Yeah.
They're already moving ahead and moving forward. So they've always had that mindset. And that's really what got them started in the industry, right in the financial group and performance. And it was all about making sure we've got the best performance. And, we know that that's critical because ultimately that performance translates into experience. And so for this 400 gig, when you think about the hyperscalers and the large enterprises, the environments only continue to grow. And with everyone moving more and more of their workloads to the cloud, there's only going to be a greater demand for this technology. It's certainly in the hyperscalers and then moving into the enterprises as well.
Yeah, and they also did announce that the hyperscale product, the 7060X5, which is the Tomahawk 4 based product, you could actually boot it to FBOSS or EOS, and FBOSS, of course, the Facebook operating system. I don't know if that becomes MetaVOS or not down the road, but that's, again, a good example of how they can run a third-party operating system on it. So, the other companies have tried this and never managed to stay on that train. Like, if you remember Force 10, they had a single OS, and then when they adopted the Fulcrum chipset, they had to create a whole other operating system around that. And a lot of people that worked at Force 10 thought that that was really the downfall of the company and one of the reasons why they struggled so much after that. But with Arista, they have managed to maintain that single OS train. And that's another area that I was skeptical. Could they do that as they moved into other areas? But here we are.
Yeah. And you're like I said, you're starting to see, maybe, like I said, we've certainly seen the trend towards organizations wanting to have end-to-end management. And so a natural extension of that, it's going to be a lot easier for organizations to have end-to-end management if they've got an end-to-end, constant OS as well running on there. So like I said, it just puts them a little bit ahead of the game as they move forward.
Yeah. And so the last vendor we'll talk about, how can we talk about networking if we don't talk about Cisco? And so Cisco's Partner Summit this week. And so while there was a lot of partner-related news, they always throw some product-related news into it as well. And probably the big product news was their new enterprise agreement. And this is something Cisco's been working on for a while. Typically buying Cisco product hasn't been the easiest thing in the world. When I was at a reseller and before that I was a Cisco customer, there's a lot of knobs and levers to turn before you get your pricing. But now they've come up with a single EA that spans across all their products. And just wondering what thoughts you had on that.
Yeah, obviously, I think this is a great move for them to do, making it easier to consume, making it easier for organizations to get on that enterprise agreement status, so that if you're, instead of it being relegated to maybe a certain domain or set of products, you can now expand that across their entire product line. So I think that's something, obviously, it's going to make it a lot easier for organizations to consume those Cisco products. And they're working hard to drive all their products into those overarching solutions. If you remember from earlier this summer, that was one of the big things they were talking about, is that we don't want to have a lot of individual product driven, but we want to have this much bigger solution, right? They've got this huge portfolio. And so they want to tackle some of the biggest problems that are out there from an end-to-end perspective, including, as we've seen, right, also the internet, right? So leveraging Thousand Eyes to be able to go out and provide additional insights to organizations about their SaaS connectivity.
Yeah, well, before they had any, did have EAs, but they had an EA for collab, an EA for security, an EA for Meraki, right? But now they're just a single EA. And on the pre-briefing, they actually did mention that you only needed to have 100,000 across all the different products, and so that's a pretty low barrier for any Cisco customer of any size. Easily spends that. So that will make it easier. And you mentioned Thousand Eyes, and I do want to talk about they did announce a new Thousand Eyes product. And I love Thousand Eyes before Cisco bought them. I think they're even better as being part of the Cisco portfolio. You talked about that single source of truth. Well, Thousand Eyes brings the Cisco customer a bunch of internet data. And 5 years ago, maybe that wouldn't have been needed, but certainly the trend you talked about, right, with hybrid work and distributed offices, the internet is part of your WAN today. Right. And so what Internet Insights does is it lets you, it gives you application level visibility for outages for all the apps you use. And so that's a lot of the social tools, Slack and Teams and Zoom, as well as, Facebook and Instagram. There's some productivity ones in there, Okta, Salesforce. And so now if there's an internet outage, you can quickly see what applications that impacts. And so, it's a tough thing for, net ops, because as soon as things aren't working, network operations gets a call and says the internet's not working, right? Or Salesforce is broken or something, but you never really know where to start. But this at least lets you know whether it's whether it's an internet problem or not. So, you had touched on that, the importance of that single source of truth. And I wonder if you could just double click on that a little.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think certainly for Thousand Eyes, and like you said, the internet is now the corporate network for a lot of organizations. And it's really important for organizations to have that end-to-end visibility so they can drive greater operational efficiency. When something goes wrong, right, you don't want them checking, well, is it this part of the network? Is it that part of the network? And, traditionally that internet's always been, when you drew it up on the whiteboard, it was the cloud. right? It was this obscure kind of, I don't know, things go in here and they come out there, and I have no idea what's going on in the middle. So I think having that visibility, obviously, in today's environment, in these highly distributed cloud environments, is going to be really critical to ensuring greater operational efficiencies. And not only operational efficiencies, but productivity, because if I'm working from my home and suddenly I can't get onto salesforce.com, I might think, oh boy, is it my Wi-Fi? Is it something, right? So I might go through a number of steps that I'm going to take to try and troubleshoot it, resulting in maybe a trouble ticket being sent in, right, and burdening our help desk. With tools like this, it enables you to very quickly identify, hey, there's a problem right now with Salesforce and no one can get to it. So if I can proactively send out an email to 10,000 of my employees, right, that I work with, my coworkers, and notify them, don't worry, it's not you, Salesforce is down, do something else, right, move on to another project, that's going to save a lot of productivity time, a lot of time wasted, trying to troubleshoot issues. So I think it's, like I said, and it's all about, ultimately, it's about having that visibility. We talked earlier about, observability, really having that really granular, detailed, end-to-end visibility, and the ability to find out when things are going wrong that we don't know, right? That we previously we could not monitor. So giving us that visibility, I think, is incredibly important.
Yeah, the way I the way I thought about it, it's like having a signal strength indicator for the internet. Like, so when you're on your phone and things aren't working well, what's the first thing you do, right? You check and go, oh, I've only got 2 bars. No wonder it's not working well. Well, what if you had that for the entire internet? Wouldn't that be awesome, right? So, and part of that is managing expectations too, right? Like if you know that there's congestion problems and things aren't performing poorly, you may not make that call to the help desk, or the IT pro would, that's trying to troubleshoot that, may just leave it and just assume it'll, once that area congestion is fixed, the problems will go away. So I think this, something like this that helps you troubleshoot the internet, is pretty badly needed today. And so I think Cisco, that was a great acquisition for Cisco, and I'm glad to see them making the most of it. So.
Yeah, and I think it's only going to get stronger as they integrate it with additional devices, right? So they're now tying it into the data center, they're tying it into the edge devices, so that what you're getting is expanding, right? It's going from the internet and they're expanding in. Or if you're a data center person, or the edge, you're saying it's starting there and expanding out. But
yeah. All right, Bob. Well, that's a lot of stuff. From our, it's again from our standpoint, I think it's great to see all the activity in networking. And it's pretty interesting. I'd say, 5-6 years ago, people looked at the network and really didn't think a lot of it. I think it was hard for guys like you and me getting the airtime at all, because networking had gotten a little boring. But now between 5G, Wi-Fi innovation, the internet, SD-WAN, SASE, there's so much stuff going on, and I think the pace of acceleration, especially with AI, is only going to get bigger from here. So.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it.
Yeah. So anyways, Bob, thanks for joining me. It's always great having you on Zcast, and I'm sure I'll be talking to you again probably next quarter.